Hey.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
Yes, well, yeah, I went into VRoid, I did this. I also had to edit the patch in through Unity. I know, I'm suffering as much as you are, don't worry. This is an equal exchange relationship. You suffer with me, and I suffer with you. So, with that out of the way, welcome to the very first episode of map making tutorial on Roblox Studio. Yes, I know this is not precisely the most exciting of topics, but I'm doing this upon the request of someone on certain Discord server. Now, in this episode, we're gonna cover the very basics of Studio and how to set down what you want to do for a map. So, Roblox Studio, the only way you can make stuff for, well, Roblox. It doesn't really take much to learn, all it takes is some dedication to master. And once you master it, you can make some really incredible stuff. Now, I'm gonna show you the basics. You usually see this screen, the new screen, where you can create a new file on Studio, a new .rbxl file. You have these tabs. These are for places on Roblox that you own, public or private, recent places that you have opened in Roblox Studio, and an archive. I will not open this for, contract reasons. So, for this tutorial, I'm going to create a baseplate type of file. I'm going to use the baseplate template for our new map. So, basics of Studio. You hold right click and you can look around. WASD, Q and E move your camera. W moves you forward towards wherever you are looking, and S moves you backwards away from whatever you're looking at. A moves you to the left, D moves you to the right, Q moves you down, E moves you up. There's a little caveat to this, and this is when you're looking straight down. I'll explain this later. So I'm looking from the top to the floor. If you press Q, it moves you back. If you press E, it moves you forward. W moves you down, S moves you up, and A and D remain the same. So to move around Studio, you hold right click and press W, and you traverse the workspace. You will notice as you traverse the workspace, you begin accelerating. It will stop accelerating when you stop moving, like that, and it restarts the acceleration. Those are the camera controls. For UI, you have your home tab, which is a very simplified tab for copying, pasting, duplicating, movement controls for parts, such as moving, scaling and rotating, and selecting two. You have something to handle collisions, which I will get onto for another episode. A terrain editor, which for the purposes of this tutorial we're not going to touch upon. Toolbox tab, which opens and closes this tab right here. This is to generate new parts, which are blocks, spheres, wedges, corner wedges, and cylinders. UI, which is to edit UI, which of course we're not gonna do. Importing 3D is for when you're trying to import a mesh from Blender or CAD Autodesk. Material Manager is for managing the, well, material of your part. You have brick, basalt, asphalt, and many other materials. Color for, well, managing the color. Group to create a group, but you can also create a group with Ctrl G. Ctrl U undoes that group. Lock, which is when you don't want to be able to select a certain part, which can come in handy for certain situations. And Anchor. Whenever you have something selected, if this is not darkened out, it means that whatever you have selected is affected by physics, or something in it is affected by physics, so make sure this is dark at all times. Now play, you have three modes. You have play, which as you can see loads in your baseplate as if it was your average Roblox game. To quit that, you press stop. You have play here, which spawns you wherever your camera is on Studio. In this case I was on top of the spawn, it spawned me on top of the spawn. And you have run, which simulates the game without players. In later episodes I should be able to demonstrate it more effectively. Game settings, it allows you to edit the settings. Of course I haven't saved this file, so it doesn't let me yet. Team test and exit game are for when you're editing a place with two or more people. Now that you have the basics of Roblox Studio controls, I'm going to get down to how to make a map. In Phantom Forces, we usually, well, play on maps. You traverse physical spaces, that's what a map is. For Phantom Forces, the average map size ranges from 500 by 500, that meaning 500 on the x-axis and 500 on the z-axis. So this is the average size. Some maps will be bigger, such as Highway Lot, which is 1000 by 975, and some maps will be smaller, such as the map currently in testing, Containers of Fun, which I think is 250 by 100. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is that big. Now, whenever you're first starting to make a map, you usually look at the base plate and wonder, what should I make? First, start by thinking how big you want your map to be. For the map I'm gonna make, I want it to be slightly small, so I don't need 2048 by 2048. I could use, I'm resetting the base plate to the origin point, which is 0, 0, 0. And now, I want my map to be 350 by 1 by 350. Now that I have my visualization, now I gotta think, what kind of style do I want to build? I had this pre-planned for this tutorial, so I'm going to show you what I want to build. Let me open Firefox, and now Japanese pagoda. You can make it whatever you want. So I want to build a, say, Japanese pagoda, like a garden or a park or something. Now, you usually take more time when looking at reference pictures, depending on what type of map you want to make. If it is complicated, like a city block, or a specific building, like a certain museum or park or public space you want to build, like a metro station or a mall. But with simpler concepts, you just need one reference image, and then sometimes I go for shapes, sometimes I go for patterns, but that comes in later. So I have my pagoda in mind. Now what I'm gonna do is set down a basic layout. To generate parts, you go to Home or Model. Both tabs have the same part generation tool. Click on the cube if you want to generate a cube, a block, in this case a rectangle. Or if you want to generate a triangle, you just click the arrow, click wedge. If you need a corner wedge to fill in the corner between two triangles, you just go below it, corner wedge. If you need a sphere or a ball or something, sphere. If you need a round pillar or a post or something, cylinder. So whenever you generate a part, it comes up without an anchor. So make sure to click anchor, and now it will no longer be affected by physics. Now, how do you handle parts? To move it, you can either use the move tool, which will allow you to move it on the Z axis with the blue arrows, X axis with the red arrows, Y axis with the green arrows, unless you rotate the part, which you can do with this tool, the rotate tool. You will rotate the part in the Y axis with the green circle, Z axis with the blue circle, and X axis with the red circle. Do note that whenever you rotate this part, you will shift where its respective axes are. For instance, before rotating it, my x-axis is looking at it from this perspective, left and right. But now I rotate it 90 degrees, and now my x-axis is front and back. Consequently, my z-axis is now left and right, when before it was my front and back. If you don't want to have this be affected, you can simply do Ctrl L and it will move along the global axis. Ctrl L to revert back to local axis. The same applies for the Y axis, so if I rotate it like this, now my Y axis is my left and right, looking at it from this perspective. Let me undo everything. Now, that's how you move and rotate a part. Now for scaling, same applies. X is my left expansion tool, I'm gonna call it like that. The other x-axis is my right extension tool. This is not like Blender, in which you can stretch it from both ends. It stretches from one singular end, which means that the center point of your part will move along the axis that you extend it to. So if I move it like this center point moves to the right, and if I move it back, the center point moves back to the left. Same goes for up and down. If you try to move a part to scale a part beneath what you have in the move setting right here, it will show a yellow outline showing that it can no longer be squished down. You can avoid this by doing move 0.25 and it will now be thinner, or 0.1 and it would be even thinner, or you can do move 0, and theoretically you should have no hard cap on how much you can squish it, but Roblox has a hard limit of 0.001. So that, let's drag this part. You can drag parts that you have selected by clicking, and holding click you can move the part around. To move a part without using these tools, you can also go to the Properties tab, scroll until you find the C-frame tab, and then go to Position, and then you can type in your position. You only want to enter 1 for X, 1 for Y, and 1 for C. Do not enter letters, otherwise it will fail. You want to enter like this, 0, 0, 0, and it is now on my desired location, in this case the origin point. Now let's go back to the pagoda. I want to make this pagoda 30 studs long, but I want to keep it on the center. So you go to size and you key in 30 where it says X. I want it to be 30 on all sides, so let's do it on both X and Z. And for height, let's make it 6 studs tall. That's good. That's just alright. Now let's build up the pagoda itself. So to duplicate a part, you can do Ctrl D and it will generate the part in the exact same location. You can also do Ctrl C, Ctrl V if you want it to be above. There is one exception, and that is if you enable collisions, which basically makes every part be able to collide with each other, to physically touch each other. So if I do Ctrl D, you cannot have two parts fusing with each other, so it will generate above it. If I disable collisions and do it again, it generates there. Usually I keep collisions off unless I need to really put something right up against the wall. Like for example, if I'm placing a car and I need it to cover a certain wall and don't want to leave like a tiny gap through which players can shoot through, I activate collisions and then move it until it no longer moves. If I keep dragging, it moves to the other side like that. That's what you want to do if you want to avoid having tiny gaps or pixels. So let's build our pagoda. For our pagoda, I'm going to make it from these 30. I'm gonna leave a 2 stud gap. Studs are the unit of measurement for Roblox. Officially, studs are 1 stud equal 5 centimeters in real life, but if we went by that, we would have very tiny Lego people. So I don't think you want that for size reference. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with a very poorly scaled map, and that doesn't help anybody. As you can see, duplicating and then scaling, which can save a lot of time. Now, when it comes to making buildings, that's actually a very personal choice. I like to do it this way. Others will do it on their own ways. You just have to fiddle around with Studio until you find a method of making buildings that you are comfortable with. Take as long as you need, because it is a very demanding process. I'll take these two, move them up to here, and then Ctrl C, Ctrl V, make this thinner, thin this out, fit it nicely to the base floors, and now we have our pagoda's entrance. But now comes the last and final step of the tutorial: illumination, lighting. In Phantom Forces, you usually cannot use this type of nice, crispy shadow map lighting due to performance requirements. So what we're gonna do is go to the Explorer window, which you can open and close from the View tab. You scroll down, or in this case, since we have so many things in the workspace, we close the Workspace tab and go to Lighting. In Lighting, as you can see, the properties changed to suit the lighting. So I think this pagoda may be too dark, so I'm gonna make the lighting 125, 125, 125. Light color is based on RGB values, so you can do up to from 000, which is complete darkness, to 255, to 255, 255, which is total lack of darkness. But that's not the only determining value. Brightness is how strong the light is in your world. So if I have it on 0, no illumination. If I have it on 10, excessive illumination. Make sure you keep your darkness low, that way it is comfortable on the eyes and you don't accidentally blind people. Color shift bottom is how the bouncing light alters the color of a part at the bottom, and color shift top is that same alteration but at the top. So if I put color shift bottom to blue, color shift top to red, it changes the color on the top of the surface. So as you can see, there's a red tint since this is red, and now the tint is blue, and now the tint is green. So usually you want to fine tune your illumination by changing around the color shift bottom and top values. Always remember RGB, red, green, blue values. Environmental diffuse and specular are more advanced settings. They make certain textures have the light bounce off of them better, makes them more reflective, such as parts with the metal material. So I won't go into these for now. Global shadows, toggles shadows. No global shadows off, no shadows. Global shadows on, yes shadows. Outdoor ambient is the color of the light outside of interiors, outside of shadows. So if I make this 255:00, which is intense red, everything outside is now red, except on the inside, because in this part there's a shadow. Let me go back, 75, 75, 75. Now everything's darker, 150, 150, 150. And now we have a nice neutral tone, let's call it. Shadow softness is for the edges of shadows. If I make it 0, it is as accurate of an outline as it can be, because you can notice the jagged edges. Those are engine limitations. If I make it 1, it is blurry. The slider goes from 0 to 1. You can tune this to personal preference. I prefer using 0.35 so that they are blurry but also slightly accurate. Technology. This determines how intense the illumination is. If you put it on future, you don't see much of a change because future is more for artificial light sources. Say, clone this part, place it up here, put it here, go to material manager and change this material to neon. And then go to effects, surface light. And now I put this at the bottom. If I make the brightness 2 and make this blue, okay, that works. So 4, when you have it set to future, I will explain lights in more detail in a future tutorial segment. If you have it set to future, you will have this really detailed lighting from both the sun and artificial sources. But if you have it on shadow map, you can notice the difference. Future, shadow map. Future, shadow map. If you have it on voxel, it changes the shadows to be more optimized for lower end systems, but keeps some advanced lighting. If you make it compatibility, it reverts to classic Roblox lighting, pre-2015 Roblox lighting. Let me delete this slide, save this for a future tutorial. Now, for Phantom Forces, we only use compatibility. We cannot change to shadow map or voxel or future lighting because it is a non-editable property, this being a property that cannot be edited through a script. Now we scroll down and you will see data and clock time. This determines the position of the sun. As you can see, I'm moving the sun around. In the x-axis, if I make it 0, the moon is up. If I make it 21, the moon is up, because it works on a 24-hour basis. Geographic latitude moves the sun on the z-axis. You have to play with this around to see where you want to have your sun being. So if you want your sun like there, and then you want to like have the light break through this archway nicely, you have to play around with clock time and geographic latitude to get it just right. This is more useful for virtual photography, but in this tutorial we're gonna cover how to use these. Time of day is when you wanna fine tune the clock time. So if I, instead of 8:23, I want 33:55, it changes the clock time accordingly. Exposure compensation, this just adds and subtracts exposure from the illumination. You can also set it to negative and have less exposure. Use current lighting is a new feature that I don't know what it does. Now, those are the basic lighting attributes, so let's go to these following attributes, which with the template I selected are here by default, but normally you have to add them through the plus button, and you type in sky, atmosphere, bloom effect, sun rays effect, and color correction. Those are the 5 effects we use for Phantom Forces maps. Atmosphere is how foggy or how clear the day is, with offset being how far or how close to the screen it is. Sky is the texture used for the skybox. Bloom is how much glow there is to certain surfaces and the sun as well. So if I make this part neon, which you can also do by going to material in the properties and pressing N, you will see it glows much more than if I made the intensity of the bloom much lower. The size, the intensity, or the threshold. Depth of field is an effect that we do not use, so you can delete it. And if you don't have it, don't worry, we do not use it. Sun rays is the rays of the sun. So if I make it 0.2, 0.8 spread, and then go into interior, you will see the sunlight passing through physically. Of course, if you have it too high, it will blind you, so I suggest keeping it at 0.01, 0.1 for a nice balanced sun rays effect. And there you go. That's our basics tutorial for how to make a map for Phantom Forces. Remember to subscribe if you want more episodes, and of course, you are now stuck in here with me. Y con eso he terminado el video. Si te ha gustado, suscríbete y dale like. Y con eso ya puedo complacer a la corporación. Por favor, quiero salir de aquí. Ya llevo editando todo el día. Dios.